Have you ever wondered how your sales performance compares against your competitors and peers? The B2B Sales Benchmark Report provides the definitive guide to what success looks like in 2021. See how you compare in terms of win rate, sales cycle, average deal value, relationships, and engagement. You can see the results and get the full report at ebster.com/B2B-sales-benchmarks. This is Sales Ops Demystified, the number one most downloaded podcast in sales operations. We invite the brightest minds in sales operations onto the show to deconstruct the why, what, and how behind rep productivity, forecasting, metrics, and all things revenue. This podcast is brought to you by Ebster, the leading customer engagement platform for Salesforce. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sales Ops Demystified. And today we have quite an interesting session because we have someone who is extremely experienced in sales operations. But we are not actually, or we're not going to say the company that Mohit works for, which is going to be interesting. But I can assure you it's a company that you may have heard of before. They're a big tech company. But Mohit, I'm super excited to welcome you on. I'm super excited for this session.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here, Tom. Excited to be here.
And a little bit of an admission here, we did try and have Mohit on about a month ago, but then we messed up the time zone. Mohit's on the west coast of America. He's in San Fran.
Yeah, I'm in a suburb of San Francisco.
Fantastic. So jealous. Okay, well, let's kick off. Mohit, how did you get into sales operations?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, actually. I never intended to be in sales operations. And, I think for those who may track me and see my profile, will actually might notice that I used to be an architect many years ago, designing buildings and hotels. And at some point in my career, I actually decided that I wanted to be on the other side of the table, as in I wanted to be a real estate financer and developer. And I went to business school to get an MBA to switch over my career. And in 2008 was when I was looking for internships, and real estate was really in a difficult spot there.
Yeah.
So I actually had to make a very quick choice what my career is going to be after I finished my MBA. So I figured I had taken a lot of finance courses. And so I got myself a summer internship at a large tech company at Yahoo. And I went there into a rotational program, and I landed up in sales operations as part of the finance. As part of the finance rotations. So I held my sort of like the career from that point on, to where I am here today, at Facebook. But obviously, I want to go on record and say I'm not representing my company here. I'm here in my individual capacity. So to summarize your question, you could say that I stumbled into where I am today in sales ops, going through those ups and downs of my previous career and through the financial meltdown of 2008. So,
I mean, it's actually a surprising number of the people that I have on stumbled in. Like they didn't like finish college or university and be like, I know exactly what I want to be. But for some reason they got placed into a role, or they found a role and they just took, like you did, right? You just took it from there. So does that mean that since 2008, when you had that rotation at Yahoo, since then you've been focused on sales operations?
Yes. Yeah. So so it's been almost 8 years now. I've been part of sales operations. Specifically related to revenue planning and strategic planning for the sales team.
Cool. And so how long were you at Yahoo? And then at what point did you transition into Facebook?
Yeah, from business school. After business school, I spent 3.5 years at Yahoo. And last 6.5 years, I've been at Facebook.
So that must have been quite a journey. But we're not here to talk about Facebook. We're here to talk about sales operations.
Absolutely.
How has the role, how has your role specifically evolved over those 6 years at Facebook?
Well, I think, look, when I joined, it was early 2013. And obviously the company was at a different space and time, and the company has grown over time, as we all know. So my role has evolved since then. I mean, initially the things we were doing at that time were really quite different. A lot of initial building blocks of, setting up operations to scale, setting up some processes and systems to bring structure into our day-to-day operations, right? So our work was a lot more operational at that time to set up the infrastructure for future. But obviously, as the organization has evolved, as the business has become more complex, our roles have changed. And also, 6 years is a long time, right? People grow in their careers and obviously take on, different scopes and positions in the company. So I think you can say that it's a long course. It's been a long journey, and definitely things have changed a lot from where we started.
For sure. So what do you think makes an awesome sales operations person?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I'll answer that from the lens with which I view sales ops, because sales ops essentially in many different companies can mean different things. So at a high level, a very successful sales ops person is somebody who's partnering with the senior sales leadership on different aspects of sales planning and operations, both. And that actually includes aspects of revenue planning, forecasting, as well as sales, go-to-market strategy, and strategic planning. And what makes somebody successful is playing in this spectrum of being a trusted advisor to the sales leadership and being their fiercest critic, which means that you want to be their right-hand person, first one they think of when they have a question in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to come to you, and you also have to be the first person to tell them that something is wrong in their business.
Interesting.
And I think once you establish that level of trust and partnership with senior sales leadership, that's what makes a really successful sales ops person, in my opinion.
So were you working with, what was the job title of the sales leadership team or person that you were working with, or that you're currently working with?
They would be the country sales lead. Cool. And their direct reports, who would be regional sales leaders.
Sure. So you would go to them and say, look, you're not going to hit your number this quarter because of X.
Yeah, I mean, normally they also know that, because in a good working environment, you have a really good pulse of the business where you have your eye on metrics on a daily, weekly basis. So so it's not as black and white as that, but I think where we add value is looking ahead, looking around the corners, and looking at some of the trends and metrics to indicate that if something is not done now, there can be a problem in future.
Sure.
And I think that is probably a larger value add, because in real time, I think people understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. I think it's looking around the corners is where a good sales ops person can add a lot of value.
Cool. I really like what you said about being both a trusted advisor, but also fiercest critic to the leadership.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's also interesting. We have some sales ops people that come in, and when I ask that question, they focus more on the sales people being their customer, you could say. But this is a different perspective. You're looking towards the kind of other side of the marketplace, if you wanted to use that analogy.
Yeah. I think just to elaborate a little bit on that, obviously your sales leaders are your customer at some point, but I think your larger customer is the company you're working for.
Okay.
And you have to wear that neutral hat to be very successful, where you want to make sure that the sales teams are they have an eye on the pulse of the business, and you are able to point out things that are not okay as well as things that are okay.
Sure. Awesome. And that's also another mindset that we haven't heard, is having like your biggest customer is not the salespeople or necessarily the sales leadership, but the actual business itself. Awesome. So another question which divides our guests on this podcast / webinar is, do you think that sales experience is necessary to succeed in sales operation?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's a mindset that makes you successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, every role is defined a little bit differently, right? And the companies have different ways of operating. Mm-hmm. But I don't think, a short answer is that I don't think sales experience is necessary to be a very successful sales ops person.
Mm-hmm. Have you had sales experience before?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you're like clearly must be performing at a high level to work at Yahoo and Facebook for a number of years. And so it's almost like you're living proof that you don't need the sales experience.
Yeah, I hope so. And I mean, I'm actually, if anything, I'm a proof that you can change your career and you can define your career the way you want it to be.
Exactly. So you were I with jumping back a bit here, but mm-hmm. prior to doing the MBA, you'd just been doing architecture.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So I was designing custom homes, custom residential projects, as well as hospitality, which would be hotels, high-end hotels.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. And in terms of the technology that Facebook are using to manage the sales operation, is there any tools that you guys are using that are specific, like that are being effective at the moment?
Actually, I don't think I'll be able to talk about anything that we are using at the company. Let's focus on some of the broader aspects versus something that's specific to the company I work for.
We can't give away the trade secrets, can we? I totally agree. Okay, let's skip forward. I want to focus on actually, like, because sales operations spans a whole different range of disciplines. You mentioned specifically sales planning in the intro.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on how that sits into the larger sales operations skill set and what your focus is at the moment in sales planning?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think sales planning essentially would mean two aspects. Right? So obviously planning from the revenue, sort of like revenue generation and sustainability perspective. And it clearly has two sort of sides to it. One is what we call revenue planning. That's forecasting revenue, setting sales targets, creating various flavors of forecast, which would be quarterly forecast, annual plan, long range plan, right? So that's the world of models and numbers where you're projecting revenue and setting sales targets. So that's one aspect of planning. And then the other aspect of planning is what we call strategic planning, right? So those would be things such as looking at sales portfolios, account segmentation, looking at sales organization. Should they be, should you be creating more sales teams to go after new verticals or new areas of businesses? Looking at sales productivity, looking at sales go-to-market strategy for new programs, new sales programs, or sort of like new products that are being launched. Looking at health checks for your specific sales organizations, right, in terms of performance. So those are sort of strategic planning aspects, which are often range from looking at a snapshot and going deep and understanding what's happening in the business that informs your future planning, or you're proactively planning for a specific outcome, like a new product launch or a new sales program. So there are, as you take a step back, there are two aspects of planning overall. One is quantitative, the other is strategic, and I think together those two make.
Okay, cool. So you are looking at the numbers that the business needs to hit, but also more strategic things like, if we're going to hit that number in this country, are we going to need to hire a new sales lead for that country and give them 10 reps? That kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Looking at market opportunity, looking at sales productivity, trying to create, what kind of market share you want to grab, which timeline, what the sales organization is going to look like.
So that for me, like, it sounds more like sales leadership work. Like for me, it would not be.
Yeah, so it's in partnership, right? That's what I'm saying, that you almost want to become a right-hand person of your sales leadership. So where you want to look around the corners and help them grow the business, as well as help them manage the business on a day-to-day basis in terms
Got it.
of
We have a
metrics
question.
and insights.
Jack Roberts, who is a very loyal listener, what skill sets are necessary for that transition into the sales operations role? I guess you went through that transition from architect to sales ops, right?
Yeah. I think at a really basic level, the skill set that you really need is looking at vast troves of data and connecting the dots and teasing out the insight, and understanding what's really happening, right? There's a lot of there are tons of metrics, and you can look at a lot of different things. So really, I think the skill set that you need is understanding what's going on in the business, and then bringing that to the sales leadership to make sure that they understand what's going on, because as a sales ops person, you can add a lot of value by bringing your analytical mindset, looking at insights and trends, and making sure you can look around the corners and let your sales leadership know what are some of the watch outs, and also it helps you plan going forward. So I would say that those would be the necessary skills. I think you can transition from almost any background into a sales operations role, as long as you have the mindset to do these things. And in addition, I think you probably have to love numbers and have to love operations, and you can wear both hats on, right? Strategic hat and operational hat, right? So you got to be able to switch between those two things. So I think those would be the skills that I would call for.
So when you say large amount of data, do you mean like you need more than just Excel skills? You need like other like SQL skills?
Well, it depends how the organization is set up. So I think if you do not have a lot of automation and a lot of reporting set up, you would definitely have to rely on SQL skills to pull data. I think in certain organizations there are also dedicated BI and IT teams that can actually create standard reporting for you. So I think in the long run, you actually should not be relying on SQL skills as much, because that is something someone else can do for you. And try to do that, because it helps the organization scale very quickly, because then you can spend more time analyzing and understanding what's happening rather than creating queries.
You don't have to use like SQL skills, but we won't say it because that could be a trade secret. How do you currently deal with the quality of that data, and do you have any interface with the CRM or platform owner?
Yeah, we definitely. We work very closely with our CRM platform owners, our sort of IT platform owners, and we ensure data quality by creating very strong partnership with the BI and IT team leadership, making sure they understand what are our large objectives, right? What are our big objectives? What is it that we are trying to achieve? Why certain type of reporting is important? And not only why it's important, the different aspects of reporting, such as timing, stability, accuracy. And I think, it works best if you have a tops-down alignment between leadership that, these things are important. And then I think that should trickle down into, sort of day-to-day people you're going to work with. So that they provide you the support you need for the type of data that you need.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it can be quite challenging when you're working with another department or another team, and you have your priorities, which may not necessarily be their priorities. And you, like, how do you manage that? Like, I think you just said, actually, you need the top-down leadership to set the priorities that are aligned, I guess.
Yeah. If you're in the part of the same company and two groups have different priorities, then I think there's a problem. If you're part of the same company, you have to have same priorities. There's just that's it. I cannot imagine an environment where there are different, but I'm quite sure in some companies that might be the case. And in those instances, it's up to the top leadership to make sure that the priorities are aligned. Often, there are softer skills, right, where you meet with people and make sure they understand your perspective. But I think more than that, you also need a tops-down alignment of priorities. It's a problem.
One more question from Jack. Which departments in the company, i.e. marketing, sales, product support, most important to have the best relationship that will drive the business? So I assume that's which departments is it most important for the sales operations team to have that relationship with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think for sales ops, probably the relationship with sales and product is probably the most critical. Often, there are groups within the company that act as a glue between product and sales to take the market insights, bring them to product for product development, or take product development timelines and features and bring them to the sales team. So I think that glue between the two departments, which often is product marketing, is very important. And I think sales ops plays a role across, creating relationships across all three functions: sales, product marketing, and product. And I think I would say that, acting as a hub and glue between these different groups.
That's quite interesting, because I totally agree having that link between marketing. I know product marketing, and sales, we have the challenge at Ebster as well. But then how does without going too much detail, how does sales operations link those three groups together?
Well, a good example of this would be, for example, the sales team is often there are so between product and sales, right? So there are often product needs that sales gathers data or intel from the market, things that are needed. And often those cases need to be made to the product team to be able to, change the product or create the products. And sales ops can actually bring a lot of value there, because they can start building a business case for the product team to understand the opportunity, the opportunity that exists in terms of the size of revenue, size of the pie, or some other factors, right? So I think sales ops can actually start building those investment cases out from the sales side to the product team to make sure that the product roadmaps start to get aligned to what sales is gathering, what's needed in the market.
For sure. Like if a salesperson trying to explain to a product person they should build this feature or this thing, and the product person's like, okay, why would I do that? The salesperson's probably not going to build like a big financial model explaining like the market opportunity, right? That's definitely sales operations.
Yeah, and often, sales ops brings that neutral point of view, right? So on one hand, they can translate the opportunity for the product team. On the other hand, they can also ensure that the sales teams are also understanding the opportunity correctly, right? They obviously gather data very granularly from the market, right? But once you start aggregating it, does that add up to does it add up to creating a viable new product, right? So I think you actually end up talking to both sides and making sure that you're actually putting a very
I learn something new about sales operations with every interview. That's my one for today, is how impactful sales operations can be in that relationship with product. Okay, biggest challenge in your role currently, without getting too specific.
Well, I think I think the biggest challenge is keeping up with the pace of the business. The way I've defined the role that I just defined for you, right? It's very broad. It actually goes from revenue planning to sales sort of strategic planning, right? And I think in that big spectrum, there is a lot that you can do. And there are a lot of roles that you can play and put a lot of different hats. And I think the biggest challenge is in understanding where to focus your energies, where you will create the biggest impact for the long term, right? And then I think there is also this balance between long term and short term, right? So you're obviously trying to, on strategic planning side, you're continuously looking at long term sort of sustainable areas of growth for the company. You're continuing to create plans how things can grow on a longer basis. But then on the revenue planning side, it's next quarter metrics, it's next quarter targets. So I think also sort of creating that balance between long term and short term focuses can be a challenge.
Yeah, like how do you? Because you have a big list of things that you would do, right? And then you have to go through and prioritize, and that's what we're talking about here. But do you have a process that you would go through to prioritize what's going to have the most long term value, or is it kind of just like a gut feel, or how do you make that selection?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So gut is difficult, right? Because it's hard to justify and it's hard to defend. I think the way you create sort of confidence in where you are, where you're going to devote your time. You start off with, you would start off with quantitative metrics as to, what is the size of the pie, how much market share I can get here, what is the long-term potential here, and then, understanding the numbers behind it. And then I think you work with, a group of leadership, which would be often sales leaders and product and your own sales ops leadership, to make sure that your point of view is well understood, and as well as you sort of vet that with other people within the company. And I think once you do that, you normally end up with a really good sense of what's the right way to move forward. I think gut can be a little bit difficult to.
Another question, Jack is sometimes on it today. I'm not sure if Mohit can answer this, but any technology that you use to prioritize work or duties? I guess that could be like a personal project management tool.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm pretty low tech. I look at things, what are my own priorities. I mean, I set my priorities for the quarter, for a half of the year. What are some of the big things I need to do, and based on that, I prioritize my time. I think this is a pretty broad question, but I would say that look at your always have your eye on sort of like a long-term objective, right? What you're trying to do, and based on that, you should always prioritize your time. Make sure it's not reactive. You're not spending time. You're not peanut buttering yourself over a lot of small things. I think make sure that there are big things in play always. I think there is a story about rocks and pebbles and sand and water. If you're trying to fill all of those things in to a big jar, how would you go about it, right? The only way you can get a lot of those things in to put the big rocks first, then pebbles, then sand, then water. But if you start putting water and sand in first, you'll never get the big rocks in. And I think the lesson from that is that make sure your big priorities are always first. Make sure you identify your big rocks and put those in first, and then
talking about metrics. Is there
all around it.
Okay, I'm going to rephrase this question. If you could only use one metric to judge a sales team, what would that metric be?
Yes. So that's a tough one, because I think you don't want to judge a sales team by just how they're hitting their revenue targets, because that makes them very sort of myopic or short-sighted, right? You also don't want to judge them always on the long term, because there's also company objectives of growing revenue in the short term. The earnings cycle is quarterly, right? So you often it's I think it's hard. Frankly speaking, the answer to your question is it's hard to judge sales by just one metric. I think it depends space and time where your company is. If you're in really early stages startup, you probably want to look at long-term objectives, weigh them in more. I would say that if you are ever in this situation, create a set of metrics that are important for you, give them weight according to, give them some weightage. depending on which stage you're at, what you're solving for. And then I think you can come up with what you could call impact score. We don't do that, but I think those are some of the ideas you can float within your organization, create some kind of a scoring system which weighs long-term and short-term.
In summary, that was a rubbish question.
Depending on what your objectives are.
That's a good answer.
That might be a better balanced view to judge a sales.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then finally, has there been an influence in sales operations in your life, whether that was at Yahoo or Facebook now, that has a person who's taught you a lot?
I think there have been a lot of people along the way. Frankly, I think my managers, for most part, have been really awesome throughout my career. I've always learned things from them. Choose your managers carefully, which means when you're applying for a role, they are interviewing you. You should also judge and interview them in a way that you really want to work for this person. I think that's important because you learn a lot. You'll learn a lot from your managers. And it's like, a lot of times if you've taken a course at college where, things you will never forget for life, because those are really good professors. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to think about it that way. You're spending, a year, 2 years, 3 years under a manager, like what are you going to learn from them? So I think going back to your question, I've learned a lot from my managers along the way. Also, you run into mentors.
And then one final question.
I don't know if I can name.
What do you think is next for Mohit? Because you've been in sales operations for like 9 years now, so surely it's time to change to be a doctor or joking. I assume you're very happy at Facebook.
I am. I mean, I really love what I'm doing. It's a great company. The role is very exciting, and I think at this point you start thinking you either want to change your career or I've already done that once, so I'm definitely not trying to do that right now. I'm very happy with what I'm doing. I think often you find roles that you really like, right? That gives you the passion. And I think as long as you're finding that passion every day to come into work and
awesome.
make a difference, I think it's a good place to be in. You really don't need
we have one more.
Change something that's
final question from Jack Roberts. So I don't think anything actually did attract you to sales operations. I guess when you started that role, then there must be things that you like. So I guess the question is, what made you stay in sales operations?
I think because I was in a rotational program early on in my career, and then I stayed on in sales operations. And I think what I really like about this is that that balance that I talked about it earlier, right? It lets you, the role can be really quite, you can define this role, right? You can be the trusted partner, you can be the fiercest critic, and you can play between those two extremes, right? And I think what really attracts me to this role is, one, that this role allows me to do a lot of different things, right? It allows me to be this neutral party looking at the business and giving me the satisfaction of driving the business to the right place. So sometimes it's by assisting the sales leadership, and sometimes it's by challenging them. And so I think having that satisfaction of getting business to a good place is what is one of the big attractions. And then, the way we get there by problem solving, critical thinking, being curious about the business, right? Those are some of the things that
awesome,
really
right, Mohit? So the two things I really liked, being the harshest critic, but also trusted advisor to sales leadership. We should get that as a quote, Joshy boy. And then the other one, the link between the product or a layer over product marketing and sales. I think that's really interesting. I've never kind of had that view before. So I want to thank you so much for your time, and sorry we messed up last time. Any final words for our audience?
I think one thing I would say is that I've learned that a lot of companies have different definitions of what they call sales operations, and I think depends where you are, but honestly, there is a need for this kind of leadership within the companies. where, the quote that Tom was just talking about, right? Fiercest critic as well as the trusted advisor. And I think if you can balance, if your role allows you that flexibility, firstly, if the organizational structure gives you that, try to play both of those roles very honestly, right? And that's going to
there we go. That's fantastic advice. Mohit, thanks again.
Sales ops partner over the long run. I think that would be my only advice.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sales Ops Demystified podcast. If you are listening on a podcast listening application, then please subscribe, rate, and review. And if you have any questions about the show, if you know a guest, or if you have any questions about sales operations, just hit me up at tomhunt@ebster.com. That's tomhunt@ebster.com.